Captain Janice Meridian stood before the vast holographic display in the war room of the ISS Determination, watching the pulsing red zones that marked former Imperial territory now under Dark World control. Half the galaxy glowed crimson, a devastating reminder of how quickly everything had changed. 53 systems, Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. The Dark World warriors control everything from the Outer Rim to the Kepler Nebula. Our forces are scattered, demoralized. Janice's fingers traced the edge of the holodable, her reflection ghost-like in its blue surface. 3 months ago, she'd been preparing for a routine diplomatic mission to the frontier worlds. Now she commanded one of the few remaining Imperial fleets, tasked with an impossible mission: convince the Dark World Governing Council to trust the very empire they just devastated. "Any word from Admiral Chen's task force?" she asked. "Lost contact 6 days ago near the Vale sector," Torres replied grimly. "We have to assume." "We assume nothing," Janice cut him off. "Hope is a tactical advantage we can't afford to lose." The bridge doors hissed open, admitting Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission's chief xenopsychologist. Her usually immaculate uniform was wrinkled, her dark hair showing the stress of sleepless nights analyzing Dark World cultural patterns. "Captain, I've finished my analysis of the intercepted Council communications," Elena said, placing a data pad on the holodable. "The situation is complex?" Janice raised an eyebrow. "In what way?" "The Dark World warriors aren't the unified force we thought. The intercepted messages suggest significant internal conflict within their governing council. There are at least 3 distinct factions, each with different motivations for the war." Torres leaned forward. "Factions we can exploit?" "Potentially," Elena continued. "The Purist faction, led by someone called the Shadow Regent, wants complete Imperial extermination. The Primatist faction seeks territorial control but might be open to negotiation. And there's a third group, the Restorationists, who seem to be fighting for something else entirely." Janice studied the data scrolling across Elena's pad. Cultural matrices, psychological profiles, communication patterns, all the tools of her trade. Before the war, Janice had been the Empire's most successful diplomatic negotiator, known for her ability to find common ground even in the most hostile situations. But this was different. This was personal. "The Dark Worlders aren't just conquering territory," Elena said quietly. "They're systematically dismantling Imperial infrastructure, government centers, cultural monuments. It's almost like they're trying to erase our civilization entirely." "Captain," Torres interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Dark World Council." The holodisplay flickered, replacing the galactic map with the imposing figure of a Dark World commander. Unlike the shadowy warriors Janice had seen in combat footage, this being appeared almost human, tall, pale, with elongated features and eyes that seemed to hold starlight within them. "I am Council Speaker Drakthal of the Restorationist faction," the figure announced in accented but clear standard. "We are aware of your mission, Captain Meridian. The Council has agreed to hear your proposal." Janice stepped forward, ensuring she was visible to the transmission sensors. "Speaker Drakthal, I appreciate the Council's willingness to meet. However, I need assurance that this isn't a trap." A sound that might have been laughter echoed from the alien speaker. "Captain, if we wished to destroy your small fleet, we would have done so already. Your ships entered our territory 3 days ago. We have been observing." The admission sent a chill through the bridge crew. They'd been detected without knowing it, completely at the mercy of their enemies. "The Council will meet with you on Valdris Prime," Drakthal continued. "But know this, trust is not given lightly among my people. You will need to prove not just your sincerity, but your understanding of why this war began." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "It's a trap," Torres said immediately. "Has to be." "Maybe," Janice agreed. "But it's also our only chance. Elena, what do you know about Valdris Prime?" The xenopsychologist's fingers flew across her data pad. "Former Imperial Research Station, abandoned 15 years ago after the Xenoarchaeology Department declared it historically insignificant. But Captain, if the Dark World has chose it as a meeting place, there might be more to the planet than our records indicate. Janice nodded slowly. Plot a course for Valdris Prime. But keep our weapons charged and our FTL drives ready for immediate jump. As the determination altered course toward what might be either salvation or destruction, Janice retreated to her ready room. The walls were lined with diplomatic achievements, peace treaties, trade agreements, cultural exchange protocols. All of it seemed meaningless now. She activated her personal console and pulled up the classified files on the Dark World warriors. What she found troubled her. The official Imperial reports described them as ruthless expansionists, driven by an ideology of galactic supremacy. But Elena's analysis suggested something different, a people driven by desperation, striking out at an empire they saw as an existential threat. The question that haunted Janice was simple: what had the Empire done to provoke such fury? The approach to Valdris Prime revealed a world of contradictions. Long-range scans showed a planet covered in ancient ruins, far older than Imperial records indicated. Massive structures jutted from jungle-covered continents, their architecture unlike anything in the galactic databases. "Captain," reported Ensign Park from the sensor station, "I'm detecting significant Dark World fleet presence in orbit. At least 30 vessels, including what appears to be a Dreadnought-class ship. Any hostile actions?" "Negative, ma'am. They're maintaining position but not targeting us." Janice studied the tactical display. The Dark World ships formed a defensive perimeter around the planet, but they'd left a clear approach vector to the surface. Either they were extraordinarily confident, or this was indeed a genuine attempt at diplomacy. "Captain," Elena's voice carried a note of excitement, "you need to see this. The planetary scans are revealing structures that predate any known civilization in this sector. Some of these ruins are over 50,000 years old." The implications hit Janice immediately. Imperial expansion had always been justified as bringing civilization to empty worlds. But if Valdris Prime held evidence of ancient civilizations— "Take us down," she ordered. "Signal the Dark World fleet that we're proceeding to the designated landing coordinates." The shuttle bay of the Determination buzzed with activity as Janice's diplomatic team prepared for landing. Besides Elena, she'd chosen Commander Sarah Kim, her tactical officer, and Dr. Marcus Webb, a xenoarchaeologist who specialized in ancient cultures. "Remember," Janice addressed her team, "we're not just representing the Empire today. We're potentially laying the groundwork for the survival of two civilizations. Whatever personal feelings we have about the war, we leave them on this ship." The shuttle Harmony descended through Valdris Prime's atmosphere, revealing a world of stunning beauty. Ancient spires rose from emerald forests, their surfaces covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change in the light. Rivers of crystal-clear water wound between structures that defied conventional engineering. "My God!" whispered Dr. Webb. "This isn't just a dead civilization. The architecture suggests a society that achieved technological integration with their environment thousands of years before we developed spaceflight." The landing coordinates led them to a vast circular plaza surrounded by towering monuments. As the shuttle touched down, Janice could see Dark World figures emerging from the shadows of the ancient structures. But these weren't the armored warriors from the battlefield reports. They wore flowing robes that seemed to shimmer with inner light, and their movements held a grace that spoke of deep reverence for their surroundings. Speaker Drakthul approached as Janice's team disembarked. In person, he was even more imposing, nearly 8 feet tall, with silver hair that moved as if underwater and those strange, starlight eyes that seemed to see too much. "Welcome to Valdris Prime, Captain Meridian," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated in her bones. "Or perhaps I should say, welcome to Keth Valdris, the Morning World, as my people call it." "Morning World?" Janice asked as they walked toward the largest monument. "The world where our ancestors first made contact with your empire," Drakthul replied. "And where they learned the true cost of imperial expansion." The monument they approached was massive, a crystalline structure that rose hundreds of meters into the sky. As they drew closer, Janice could see that its surface was covered in images that moved like living memories. Scenes of contact between two species, initial cooperation, then growing tension, and finally, genocide. Elena breathed, her xenopsychologist training allowing her to interpret the visual narrative. Captain, this shows the systematic extermination of an entire species. Drakthal's expression was unreadable. The Kethvala were our predecessor civilization. They inhabited over 200 worlds in this sector. When your empire arrived 800 years ago, they welcomed you as fellow seekers of knowledge. They shared their technology, their art, their philosophy. I don't understand, Commander Kim interjected. Our historical records show this region was uninhabited when we arrived. Of course they do, Drakthal said with bitter amusement. Imperial history is written by imperial historians. The truth is somewhat different. He gestured to the monument, and the moving images responded, showing scenes of imperial fleets bombarding cities, of entire populations being relocated to processing centers, of ancient knowledge being systematically destroyed. The Kethvala made one mistake, Drakthal continued. They refused to surrender their most sacred sites to imperial mining operations. Your ancestors decided that any species that would choose their heritage over imperial profit was too dangerous to live. Janice felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. You're saying the Empire committed genocide? I'm saying the Empire has committed many genocides, Captain. The Kethvala were simply the first in this sector. We Dark Worlders are their distant cousins, evolved from the few survivors who escaped to the void between stars. For 8 centuries, we've grown strong in the darkness, preparing for the day we could return and reclaim what was stolen. Dr. Webb was studying the monument's base, his archaeological training evident in his careful examination of the inscriptions. Captain, the dating methodology here is incredibly sophisticated. This isn't propaganda. It's a historical record created by a civilization that understood temporal mechanics in ways we're only beginning to grasp. You doubt the truth of what you see? Drakthal asked. I doubt everything until I can verify it, Janice replied honestly. But I'm also beginning to understand why your people chose war over diplomacy. Drakthal led them deeper into the monument complex, to a chamber where the Dark World Governing Council waited. Janice counted 12 figures representing the 3 factions Elena had identified. The tension between them was immediately apparent. The purists stood apart, their leader, the Shadow Regent, emanating an aura of barely contained hostility. The pragmatists occupied the center, while the restorationists flanked Drakthal. The question before us, announced the Shadow Regent in a voice like grinding stone, is whether the Empire is capable of acknowledging truth, let alone acting upon it. Janice stepped forward. I acknowledge that if what Speaker Drakthal has shown us is accurate, the Empire has committed terrible crimes. But I also know that both our civilizations face extinction if this war continues. The Empire's remaining forces are planning a final offensive that will likely destroy both sides. Murmurs rippled through the council. One of the pragmatist leaders, a being who introduced herself as Trade Coordinator Velana, leaned forward. What do you propose, Captain? A truth commission, Janice said, the idea forming as she spoke. A joint investigation into the historical crimes committed by both sides. Full disclosure of Imperial archives, access to Dark World historical records. Let's build trust on a foundation of acknowledged truth. The Shadow Regent's laugh was like breaking glass. Trust? Your Empire destroyed 3 worlds just in the past month. Your Admiral Morrison ordered the orbital bombardment of civilian populations on Kepler 7. Because your warriors took hostages. Commander Kim shot back before Janice could stop her. They used civilian shields. Enough! Drakthal's voice carried an authority that silenced the chamber. We are here because the alternative to discussion is the death of everything we've both fought to preserve. Captain Meridian, your proposal has merit, but it does not address the immediate crisis. What immediate crisis? Janice asked. Velana activated a holographic display that showed the current galactic situation. Your Empire's High Command has authorized the use of quantum destabilizers. They plan to collapse the hyperspace corridors in occupied territory, trapping our fleets but also destroying the planets they're trying to reclaim. Janice's blood turned cold. Quantum destabilizers were a theoretical weapon that could unravel the fabric of space-time itself. That's impossible. The Imperial Senate would never approve such a measure. The Imperial Senate was dissolved 3 weeks ago. The Shadow Regent informed her with grim satisfaction. Your government now operates under martial law. Admiral Harrison has assumed emergency powers and declared that victory justifies any cost. The revelation hit Janice like a physical blow. Everything she believed about her mission, about the Empire's intentions, was based on outdated information. She wasn't representing a constitutional government seeking peace. She was the envoy of a military dictatorship preparing to commit galactic-scale atrocide. I didn't know, she said quietly. We know, Drakthol replied with surprising gentleness. Our intelligence network informed us of these developments, but we also know that you departed before the announcement. The question is, what will you do now? Janice looked at her team. Elena's face reflected her own shock and horror. Commander Kim appeared stunned. Dr. Webb was furiously taking notes, his scientific mind already trying to process the implications. There's something else, Valana continued. Our scouts have detected Imperial fleet movements suggesting the quantum destabilizer attack will begin within 72 hours. If successful, it will render 47 star systems uninhabitable for millennia. 47 systems, Elena whispered. That's over 3 billion inhabitants. Imperial and Dark World populations combined, Drakthol confirmed. Your Admiral Harrison has apparently decided that if he cannot rule the galaxy, no one will. Janice felt the weight of impossible decisions settling on her shoulders. She could return to Imperial space with intelligence about Dark World capabilities and intentions, potentially saving Imperial lives but enabling genocide. She could stay and help coordinate resistance, making her a traitor to everything she'd sworn to protect. Or she could try to find a third option, one that seemed increasingly impossible. I need to think, she said finally. Time is a luxury we lack, the Shadow Regent observed coldly. Perhaps this proves that the Empire cannot be trusted under any circumstances. Give me 12 hours, Janice requested. Let me consult with my ship, verify what you've told me, and formulate a response. The Council exchanged glances, some form of silent communication passing between them. Finally, Drakthol nodded. 12 hours. But know this, Captain, at the end of that time, we will act with or without Imperial cooperation. Too much blood has been spilled to permit further delay. Back aboard the Determination, Janice convened an emergency meeting with her senior staff. The mood in the conference room was grim as Elena finished briefing the assembled officers on their discoveries. So what you're telling us, said Chief Engineer Rodriguez, is that our entire war effort is based on a lie, and our own government is planning to commit mass genocide to win? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Janice replied. The question is, what do we do about it? Lieutenant Commander Torres spoke first. With respect, Captain, this has to be Dark World propaganda. The Empire doesn't commit genocide. We're the defenders of civilization. Are we? Dr. Webb interjected, pulling up his archaeological analysis on the main screen. I've been studying the data from Valdris Prime. The geological evidence, the dating of the ruins, the cultural artifacts, it all supports the Dark World version of events. The Kethvala civilization was real, and it was systematically destroyed by Imperial forces. 800 years ago, Torres protested. Even if it's true, we can't be held responsible for the actions of ancient history. Ancient history that's been systematically covered up, Elena added quietly. I've been reviewing Imperial historical archives. There are gaps, inconsistencies, entire sectors where official records simply don't exist. The pattern suggests deliberate suppression of information. Commander Kim leaned back in her chair. Let's assume for a moment that everything the Dark Worlders have told us is true. Let's assume the Empire has committed genocide in the past, that our government has been taken over by extremists, and that Admiral Harrison really is planning to use quantum destabilizers. What can we possibly do about it? We're one ship with a crew of 350. We're one ship with access to the Imperial Communication Network, Janice replied. We could broadcast the truth to every remaining Imperial fleet. Force the officers to choose between following illegal orders and preserving their oath to protect civilization. That would be mutiny, Torres observed. Yes, Janice agreed. It would be. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Every person in the room understood that they were discussing treason against the state they'd sworn to serve. But they were also discussing the potential salvation of billions of lives. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sarachin spoke up for the first time. I've been reviewing the casualty reports from the occupied territories. The Dark World warriors have been surprisingly restrained in their treatment of civilian populations. Yes, there have been deaths, but nothing approaching the systematic extermination we've been told to expect. In fact, their medical corps has been treating wounded Imperial civilians alongside their own forces. More propaganda, Torres muttered, but his tone lacked conviction. Or evidence that we've been lied to about our enemy's nature, Janice countered. Chief Rodriguez, what's the status of our quantum communication array? Fully operational, Captain. We could reach every Imperial vessel in the galaxy if needed. Janice stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the ancient world below. In the distance, she could see the lights of Dark World settlements, peaceful communities that would be vaporized if Admiral Harrison's plan succeeded. There's something else we need to consider, she said without turning around. If the Dark World intelligence is accurate, they know about the quantum destabilizer attack. They're not going to simply wait for annihilation. They'll fight back with everything they have, and that means total war, Elena finished. No survivors on either side. Unless we find a way to stop it, Janice concluded. She turned back to face her officers. I'm going to ask something unprecedented of all of you. I want you to take the next 6 hours to examine everything we've learned, cross-reference it with our own intelligence, and then make a choice. Not as Imperial officers, but as sentient beings faced with the possibility of galactic genocide. Captain, Torres began. What you're suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything yet, Commander. I'm asking you to think. Really think about what we've learned and what our obligations are, not just to the Empire, but to life itself. As the meeting dispersed, Elena lingered behind. Janice, there's something else. Something I didn't mention in front of the others. What is it? Elena activated her personal data pad, showing a series of psychological profiles. I've been analyzing the Dark World leadership structure. Their society is built around something they call the memory mandate, an obligation to remember and avenge historical injustices. But there's a subset within each faction, individuals whose psychological profiles suggest they might be willing to break from that mandate if given sufficient reason. You're talking about building a peace faction. I'm talking about something more radical than that. Some of these individuals, Drakthal among them, show indicators that they might be willing to abandon the war entirely if they could be convinced that genuine justice was possible. Janice studied the profiles. What would that require? Full Imperial acknowledgement of historical crimes, reparations to surviving populations, and probably the restructuring of Imperial government to prevent future abuses. In other words, the complete transformation of everything the Empire represents. The magnitude of what Elena was suggesting was staggering. They weren't just talking about ending a war, they were talking about reimagining galactic civilization itself. There's more, Elena continued. Some of the restorationist communications suggest they've been developing technologies based on Kethvala science. Technological advances that could revolutionize energy production, medical treatment, even space travel itself. The war isn't just about revenge, it's about preventing the Empire from destroying or co-opting knowledge that could benefit all species. A chime from Janice's communication console interrupted their conversation. Captain, this is Bridge Officer Park. We're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Harrison himself. Janice and Elena exchanged glances. Routed to the conference room, Janice ordered. Admiral Harrison's image appeared on the main screen, his weathered features set in grim determination. Behind him, Janice could see the bridge of the Retribution, the Empire's most powerful dreadnought. Captain Meridian, I trust your diplomatic mission has provided valuable intelligence on dark world capabilities. Harrison began without preamble. I'm transmitting new orders. You are to withdraw from enemy territory immediately and proceed to rendezvous coordinates Alpha 7. Your intelligence will be crucial for the final phase of our operation. Admiral, I need to report significant developments in the diplomatic situation, Janice replied carefully. The Dark World Council has indicated willingness to negotiate. Irrelevant. Harrison cut her off. The time for diplomacy has passed. The enemy has revealed their true nature through their actions. They seek nothing less than the complete destruction of human civilization. Admiral, with respect, I believe there may be alternatives to. Captain Meridian. Harrison's voice turned cold. You will follow your orders. The survival of humanity depends on decisive action, not wishful thinking about negotiating with genocidal aliens. Harrison out. The transmission ended, leaving Janice staring at the blank screen. Elena placed a hand on her shoulder. He doesn't know that we know about the quantum destabilizers, Elena observed. No, but he's clearly not interested in any information that contradicts his predetermined course of action. Janice activated her personal console. Computer, display all communications from Imperial Command over the past month. As the files appeared, a disturbing pattern emerged. Every report from diplomatic or intelligence sources that suggested Dark World forces might be open to negotiation had been classified and buried. Every report that emphasized their military threat or suggested their intractable hostility had been given wide distribution. They're not just planning genocide, Janice realized. They're manufacturing consent for it. Elena nodded grimly. Classic authoritarian information control. Create a narrative that supports the predetermined policy, suppress any contradictory evidence. Captain? Commander Kim's voice came through the intercom. You asked us to verify the Dark World intelligence about quantum destabilizers. We've confirmed it through our own sensor network. Imperial forces are positioning quantum destabilizer platforms in 12 different sectors. Deployment will be complete in 68 hours. Janice closed her eyes, feeling the weight of galactic destiny settling on her shoulders. When she opened them again, her decision was made. Commander Kim, please ask all department heads to report to the conference room. It's time to make our choice. The conference room fell silent as Janice finished outlining their options. Every face around the table reflected the gravity of the moment. They were deciding not just their own fates, but potentially the future of galactic civilization. So our choices are treason, genocide, or extinction, Chief Rodriguez summarized bleakly. Those are the immediate options, Janice confirmed. But there might be a fourth path. She activated the holographic display, showing the current positions of Imperial and Dark World fleets. What if we could convince both sides to stand down simultaneously? What if we could create a joint action that exposes the quantum destabilizer plot while demonstrating genuine Imperial commitment to peace? How? Torres asked, though his tone suggested growing acceptance of the situation. We broadcast everything, Elena said, understanding Janice's plan immediately. Every piece of evidence about historical Imperial crimes, every intelligence report about the quantum destabilizer plot, every indication that the Dark World forces might be willing to negotiate. We force both sides to confront the truth simultaneously. Commander Kim was studying the tactical display. It could work, but we need cooperation from elements within both fleets. Captain, do you think the Dark World Council would be willing to coordinate such an action? There's only one way to find out, Janice replied. Dr. Webb, how long would you need to compile a comprehensive evidence package? Something that would convince reasonable people on both sides? Give me 4 hours, Webb replied immediately. I've been cross-referencing Imperial historical records with the Dark World data. The pattern of cover-ups and suppression is undeniable once you know what to look for. Elena, Can you prepare psychological profiles for the key leaders in both fleets? We need to know who might be persuaded and who's likely to resist no matter what evidence we present. Already working on it, Elena confirmed. Janice looked around the table at her officers. I want everyone to understand what we're proposing. If we go through with this, there's no going back. We'll be branded as traitors by Imperial Command, and we'll be trusting our lives to former enemies. Anyone who wants to transfer to a shuttle and return to Imperial space has that option. The silence stretched for long moments. Finally, Torres spoke. Captain, I've served the Empire for 22 years. But I didn't swear an oath to follow illegal orders or participate in genocide. If there's a chance to prevent the destruction of billions of lives, I'm with you. One by one, the other officers voiced their agreement. By the time the vote was complete, Janice had unanimous support from her senior staff. Then let's go prevent a Holocaust, she said quietly. 2 hours later, Janice stood once again in the ancient plaza on Valdris Prime, but this time the Dark World Council had been joined by representatives from their fleet commanders. The atmosphere was tense. News of the quantum destabilizer deployment had reached them, and several speakers were calling for immediate preemptive strikes against Imperial positions. You return to us quickly, Captain Meridian, Drakthol observed. I hope this indicates a decision on your part. It does, Janice replied. But first I need to know something. If we can prove to your people that genocide is about to be committed in their name, would they support joint action to prevent it? The Shadow Regent stepped forward, his dark robe seeming to absorb the light around him. Imperial genocide, you mean? We are the victims, not the perpetrators. Are you? Janice activated a portable holographic projector, displaying intelligence reports her crew had compiled. According to our sensor data, Dark World forces have placed asteroid miners in the Kepler system's sun. If activated, they would cause a solar flare that would sterilize 4 inhabited worlds. The effect on the Council was immediate. Several members began speaking rapidly in their own language, their tones suggesting surprise and anger. That intelligence is classified, Velana said carefully. How did you? The same way you learned about our quantum destabilizers, Janice interrupted. We have sources in each other's command structures. The question is, are those asteroid miners under Council control? Drakthal's expression was troubled. They are under Shadow Fleet Command. An independent operation authorized by. He glanced at the Shadow Regent. Certain faction leaders. Unauthorized action, the Shadow Regent declared firmly. Shadow Fleet operations are conducted under my direct authority as a Council member. So you do authorize genocide, Commander Kim accused. I authorize the defense of my people by any means necessary, the Shadow Regent replied coldly. Your empire taught us that mercy is a luxury that results in extinction. And that attitude, Janice said, is exactly why both our civilizations are about to die. She gestured to Elena, who activated their comprehensive evidence package. The holographic display filled with data, historical records, communication intercepts, tactical analyses, and psychological profiles. This is what we know, Janice began. Imperial Command is planning to activate quantum destabilizers in 65 hours. Dark World Shadow Fleet is planning to trigger solar flares in the Kepler system in 48 hours. Both actions will result in the deaths of billions of innocents. Both actions will guarantee that this war escalates beyond any possibility of resolution. The Shadow Regent studied the data with obvious interest. Your intelligence is accurate. But it changes nothing. The Empire cannot be allowed to survive. Even if survival means the death of everything? Dr. Webb interjected. Speaker, I've studied your people's history, your connection to the Kethvala. They were builders, creators, preservers of knowledge. Would they want their memory honored through the destruction of entire civilizations? For the first time, the Shadow Regent seemed to hesitate. Around the council chamber, other voices began to rise, some supporting immediate action, others questioning the wisdom of mutual annihilation. Drakthal raised his hand for silence. Captain Meridian, what exactly are you proposing? Simultaneous broadcast to both fleets. Full disclosure of the war crimes being planned by extremists on both sides. Let the fleet commanders and their crews choose whether to follow orders that will result in genocide, or to stand down and allow cooler heads to prevail. You're asking us to trust that Imperial officers will refuse orders from their high command, Velan observed. And I'm asking Imperial officers to trust that Dark World commanders will defy their most radical factions, Janus replied. It's a leap of faith for everyone involved. The debate that followed was intense, conducted partly in Standard and partly in the Dark World language. Janus could see the three factions crystallizing around different positions, the purists supporting immediate action, the pragmatists favoring caution, and the restorationists apparently divided among themselves. Finally, Drakthul spoke. We will agree to your proposal, with conditions. The broadcast must include Imperial acknowledgement of historical crimes against the Kethvala and other extinct species. It must also include a formal apology and a commitment to reparations. I can't speak for the Empire, Janus said carefully, but I can speak as an Imperial officer who has seen the evidence. Yes, crimes were committed. Yes, species were destroyed. Yes, the truth was covered up. And yes, anyone with a conscience should demand justice for those crimes. The Shadow Regent's laugh was bitter. Pretty words, Captain? But words do not resurrect the dead. No, Janus agreed, but they can prevent the creation of billions more. Speaker Drakthul, I'll agree to your conditions if you'll agree to mine. The broadcast must also include Dark World acknowledgement that current Shadow Fleet operations constitute planned genocide. It must include a formal commitment to stand down those operations pending negotiations. And if the Imperial fleet refuses to stand down their destabilizers? The Shadow Regent demanded. Then we'll face that crisis when it comes, Janus replied. But at least we'll face it with the truth exposed and the choice clear to everyone involved. The council deliberated for another hour while Janus and her team waited in the ancient plaza. Finally, Drakthul emerged with their decision. The council agrees by a vote of 7-5. We will participate in your joint broadcast. But Captain, if this fails, if your Imperial officers choose genocide over justice, then we will respond with every weapon at our disposal. The Kethvala will not be forgotten, and their deaths will not go unavenged. Understood, Janus replied solemnly. Let's hope it doesn't come to that.